Okay, so this is Aaron Murakami, and today is October 14th, 2013. And recently we had just released the Lone Pine writings. I guess you could call it a re-release. And I have Eric Dollards here on the phone, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Can you hear me okay, Eric?
Yeah, you're coming in fine.
Okay. Let's see. Well, as you know, we recently re-released Lone Pine writings through A&P Electronic Media. And Peter Lindemann wrote the foreword in this one, and despite the fact that, there was some strange things going on with this book, with it being released by others, being for sale, and being given away for free, and all this kind of stuff, despite all that, there's been a lot of show of support by a lot of people still purchasing this copy to support your work. Now, the title of it, Lone Pine Writings, do you want to give a reference or explain exactly what Lone Pine is? This is your address where you live.
Well, I wouldn't say where I live, but it's an area that I gravitate around.
And
so it's pretty much geophysically, it's a very isolated location, and it's a good place to live outside. I ended up there destitute. Somebody had sabotaged my car, and my installation at Landers had been destroyed, and pretty much that was the end of it. So I crash landed there, and this book writing gave me something to do.
Okay, so you got into the Lone Pine area after all the Landers incident, and so what got you to writing the papers, which were originally posted on EnergeticForum, which are now called the Lone Pine writings?
It kind of started off in a funny way. Actually, I gotten on the EnergeticForum a lot earlier, but the person there in San Anselmo that was supposed to help me with that cut me off, and then when I got the Lone Pine, I figured, well, maybe I should start to do that again because I had no money for food or anything when I got there, and the car was wasn't a good idea to operate it because oil had been drained out of something and the bearings were bad, but I was able to move around, so I tried to, go around town and see if there's some way, I could work or whatever, try to get something going. So I went to the museum to see what was happening there because I'm a biologist and a number of other things, so I figured maybe there's some project I can get involved with just to pass the time. There's about 4 or 5 locals hanging out in there, and we got to talking about the power company and some other things. So one guy he's got a chemistry degree and something, so he wanted to get into the details about my concept of what I called the plank. So we scribbled a bunch of stuff down, and for about 3 or 4 hours, we had a good time that morning, going through all this. And the guy said, hey, that really helped me understand how all this works. So that's what started the book. At that point, 1 page of notes kept growing and growing. I really didn't have much of anything to do living in my car out in the desert. So I had no reference books. I had nothing at all to work with other than my head. So I figured, well, let's reinvent the theory of electricity and get all the kinks out of it, and so that started that book.
Okay, so the Lone Pine writings literally was written on a clipboard in the front seat of your car.
Yeah.
Or a notebook.
Yeah, and there wasn't really a lot of money for paper or beer or food or much anything to do it, so it was a difficult process, but it kept going forward, and what's out now is basically like one part of it, but there's still 2/3 of it that hasn't been published yet.
So there's so basically you would write these papers up, then you would send them off to somebody who would then type them up into EnergeticForum for you under your username T-Rex, right?
Yeah, that's what I'd have to do. Initially there was a guy there in town that said he would help me with it, but then he got all weird about it, something in my writing interfered with his religious beliefs. So there's somebody that sent me a whole bunch of people wanted me to call them, send me letters and all that. So one guy over towards the East Coast sent me a letter or whatever and said, I'll do this for you. And then I started mailing the stuff to him, and he put a lot of that together. So then, what I do is I'd write it, and I'd go to the post office and drop it in the mailbox and launch it into the cosmos, and I had no way to look at it or anything, really. It was totally a blind operation. I just, every week I went to the post office and dropped what I wrote in the mail thing there, and off it went into infinity.
Right. So that's so yeah, you put it in a post office box and it just wind up on the internet at EnergeticForum. And I think that that original thread where somebody's older writings, the original writings were being posted was in the Peter, whatever happened to Eric Dollards. That's the name of the thread where that was originally posted.
Yeah, that's where it started off. So somebody had run across that title, saw my name on the internet.
Right.
A guy there in San Anselmo who was helping me with some stuff and let me stay at his place. And then originally he had kind of a bad attitude about a lot of that kind of stuff because he had some people in his house that, were kind of sapping his resources and claiming a bunch of free energy stuff. So he decided to get me on there as T-Rex, as kind of the loose, vicious reptile to tear into that whole situation. So that's ultimately what I kind of did.
Right. So essentially, this Lone Pine Writing book is a compilation of papers that you had posted on EnergeticForum, and essentially they've been there free for anybody to go in there and read them and copy them and stuff for, what is it now, probably almost 3 years?
Well, it's over 3 years now. The only problem is it's so scattered throughout, to try to find it would be very difficult. That's what makes the book an easy process, because then it's all there. You don't have to search page after page.
Right. So, so anybody that does want to look for them, they'd have to scan through, thousands of posts and spend hundreds of hours just to find them all. And with this book being published, Lone Pine Writings, which is at lonepinewritings.com, you have it all there. Now, the subtitle of the book is A Common Language for Electrical Engineering.
Right.
And so the basic concept of the book is that you're starting from scratch, basically defining each of the electrical terms, showing the basic math equations and the dimensions and how it all kind of ties together. And when you mentioned earlier, to get the kinks out of it, is it to correct some things that have been left out or have been twisted and contorted over the years?
Yeah, basically the whole thing is a complete mess. And nobody knows what the definition of any of the terms are anymore. That's a big problem.
Right.
So you can ask somebody what a volt is, and you'll get as many reasons as there are people that you ask the question.
Right.
So I decided to get all that hashed out and unify the whole mathematics, the basic mathematics and dimensions of electricity, and get all that right based on, a process that Steinmetz had started a long time ago and sewed all over Heaviside, but it never went any farther.
Well, I know when I was working with Peter on the book, and it had already been compiled into kind of a book before, but it wasn't really formatted very well for people to be able to, keep the concepts in order. And after he kind of went through it, and he kind of reorganized it a little bit better, more in the math book style, so that it makes a little bit more sense to people, he was really kind of blown away and said, this is definitely where everybody needs to start. If people want to get into the math and they're into electrical engineering and stuff, at whatever level they're at, however many years of experience they have, definitely it's recommended that this is the book to start with.
Well, the problem now in the electrical engineering world is no one really knows what's going on anymore. So it's kind of like nobody's at the controls. It's a real problem.
Right.
And things are starting to take a couple of real wrong turns, and so it's basically everything has to be relearned all over again from scratch. So what's in this particular volume of these writings is initially, for the bulk of it that's in that part, there was a guy in Lone Pine that was assembling that for me, and he didn't want to bother with the equations or all that stuff, so I had to do it all in words. So that's about the least symbolic math book you'll ever find on the planet.
Right.
Everything's done with words and common, analogies, dealing with like physical things that you encounter in life, and not any, abstract, Greek letters or any of that type of stuff. Of course, to the end, it builds up.
Right.
But it's still, there's no sea of partial differential equations. There's none of that stuff. Well, everything is basically, nothing goes farther than first year high school algebra.
Right.
And ultimately, nothing really needs to. That's what's absolutely amazing about this whole thing, is everything's been so overcomplicated that the myriad of complications has become kind of like its own entity, and now the complications are running the show, and the original content is all lost. It's completely backwards.
So even in your more advanced stuff, getting into the four-quadrant theory and everything, and the other stuff that you're working on mathematically, it's still just using for first or second level high school algebra?
Yeah, nothing goes past any math that you learned in high school, assuming that that you took math in high school. Every semester you took geometry. If you took algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2 with some very introductory calculus, a heavy emphasis on exponents, logarithms, and imaginary numbers in algebra 2, it's all basically I learned all this stuff in high school. I started doing this stuff in high school.
Right.
Most of the complicated stuff, like normally you get mired in all these trigonometric identities and sines and cosines and all this stuff, and it gets way too complicated. They never tell you where it came from. But then that's what they were teaching in school. But then when I had to get my FCC licenses and I had to do my own calculations and I had to study stuff at RCA, I learned the Steinmetz method, and that eliminated all that.
Right.
You didn't need any trigonometry. So that started to make me think, what's the use of all this stuff if you don't need it? It's just the whole thing just turns into a giant mathematical exercise. So my attempt has been to get everything back into basic relations. You look at these very old books like from J.J. Thompson or any of these pioneers in this area and their experiments, nothing was very mathematically elaborate. It was all very basic. Everything was basic relationships. The experiments were very crude and simple. None of that complexity is required. It just gets in the way.
Right. Now, when you mentioned that, this particular Lone Pine Writings book is just the beginning part, are the other parts, like say, part 2, part 3, or intermediate and advanced or whatever, are those already posted in EnergeticForum?
Oh yeah, the whole thing's there. So
okay,
there
so
was a
point.
What it did is it finally. The part that's out now is like the preparatory.
101.
Yeah, so the preparatory phase gets you through, you understand what all the words mean and how they connect together and what they actually tie into it in a physical reality. Then it starts to get into like various applications to that. There was a whole project that went on was to figure out at what impedance were the forces between two conductors on a transmission line neutral. In other words, the attractive of the dielectric and the repulsive of the magnetic, there'll be a certain impedance that it would be equal. So I kind of threw that out as a contest, but it turned out to be there wasn't anybody out there that knew pretty much anything about this stuff. So there's two other people hashed it out. So I managed to work all that out, which led to some really interesting mathematical perspectives on permeability and dielectric constant. So then one of the people there at Lone Pine started bringing me books in the coffee shop to read to help explain to him to understand what was going on. So then I started taking these books, and then I made whole series. Like one was called The Theory of Anti-Relativity. Another one was called something with versors and Pythagoras and Steinmetz. And then I came up with a more practical thing called the Bolinas antenna, which showed you how to kind of like deal with the geometry of analog networks, computers, and antennas, and in the end actually has a construction project that you can build. And then the last one was, I think it was the theory of electromagnetic induction, and there's another one, four-quadrant, I can't remember. But
something energy exchange.
Yeah, those were, that was the finale.
And those are going to be included as appendix, either in the book or.
Well, this will be a whole other volume. There'll probably be 2 more volumes.
Right.
That's where a lot of material, the heavy material is all in that. The material that's coming out now is kind of the first volume of possibly 3.
Okay. So we'll be compiling those and releasing those at some point. And if you're listening to this, and if you're not really familiar with the Lone Pine Writings, I definitely encourage you to get a copy. The proceeds are going to Eric Dollards and his work at UPD Laboratories, And if you go, Eric's official homepage is ericpdollard.com. That's the middle initial P for Paul. So if you go to ericpdollard.com, that's his homepage, and on the right side, if you just scroll down, you'll see the last three releases. The first one was four-quadrant representation of electricity, which was Eric's presentation at the Bikini Lindemann 2013 conference at the end of June up in North Idaho. The second one is Wireless Giant of the Pacific. There's a little bit of, I would say, misinformation going around that that's not your book, but in reality, you did put that book together, and there's actually two books with the same title, one by a historian, and then there's yours, and there's some goofy stuff being posted online that your book has been freely available for the past 10 years online, which is not true because it wasn't even available until a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
the
release of that book was actively suppressed. The release of the companion historical resources study, I was working with a local historian that was hired by the National Park Service to engage in this thing that I'd started there, and
right.
and that pretty much got shut down as too. So I don't know if somebody's. I know my work has been totally suppressed. As far
right.
as the historical resources thing goes, I was advised. I could have been advised wrongly, but I was advised by people that are into that that book or publication or report, I don't know exactly what you would call it, also was suppressed, and I had a copy that was given to me by the historian, and I managed to, on the earlier Energetic Forum interval, I'd started an American Marconi website to deal strictly with the Ballina Station. We attempted to release the historic report, and then the person that put it on the internet was very viciously threatened by the people that wanted to suppress it, and that was the end of that. So I'm amazed that any of this is out. I can't quite understand. Anybody could say it was available. I'd like to know how it was available.
Yeah, the Wireless Giant of the Pacific that you put together absolutely is not available, has not been available. The historian one was on the that Marconi website at one point, and then the links were taken off of the website so that it didn't show that historian's book was there anymore. However, Google captured a copy of the that book.
Oh, they did.
So that book comes up in the search rankings because Google captured that, because the person who runs the website never actually removed the document. He just deleted the links when he was threatened.
Okay.
So if you go into the actual website and look around, you're not going to see any. You'll see a reference to it, but there's no links to it. Those were all taken off. But that PDF is still available through Google. But in any case, the Wireless Giant of the Pacific, available at wirelessgiantofthepacific.com, is definitely Eric's book, and the historian's one of the same title is just included as a secondary reference, and there's a couple other documents in there that Eric gave talks on. And then the third most recent one that we just released is Lone Pine Writings, and you can find all those on ericpdollard.com. And if you click on any of the links right there on the page, Eric earns most of the money that's going to purchase those copies, in addition to royalties and stuff. And so this all goes to Eric and his lab to help pay for expenses, equipment, parts, supplies, that kind of stuff, and even to help go towards paying off the building and everything. Now, I didn't get a chance to really announce this interview or do a live one where we had other people listening and stuff, so I didn't really get a chance to get questions from others. However, I did recently just get one comment and then one question. One question somebody had, which I talked to you on the phone the other day, maybe you can mention it or go over it with me, is he said in some talk or some paper somewhere you made a reference to an 8-pointed figure or something dealing with 8 variables, and he was wondering why that's missing out of the Lone Pine Writings.
Oh, I don't remember that being in that particular part of the writings. That would be way too advanced for that.
And so so just being that that's more of an advanced concept, that's why it's not in the Lone Pine Writings. As simple as that.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine I would get into any type of 8 coordinate versor system when people still don't really quite understand what an ohm is yet.
Right. Okay. And then let's see. Yeah, the only other question I had, and again, I didn't have time to announce that there will be an interview for anybody to listen. But what I will do is take this recording and I'll put it up on YouTube, so plenty of people will be able to hear it. Not only will it be on my YouTube channel, but it'll be on your YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this right now, Eric has his own YouTube channel, which I'm going to be putting up all the interviews and some of these old Borderland videos and some other stuff. And if you just search in Google for Eric Dollard, you can go find his Google network profile and add him as a friend in there. It's kind of like a Facebook kind of social network, but it's Google's. So I'd recommend going in there because that is Eric's personal Google profile, and that will link into his YouTube channel. There was somebody that added you as a friend, and I don't know if you know this person. His name is John Paradise, and he was just saying, "Hey, Eric, what's up?" So I don't know if you know him personally or if there's any.
No, I don't particularly recall that name. You have to remember, that I live in the bushes
Right.
over feral humans. So when you start talking about YouTube and all that kind of stuff and whatever, to me, those things are all very abstract.
Right. So, but in any case, you have a lot of supporters who are watching your work. Not a whole lot of them are making comments right now because that Google profile page and everything is still fairly new. It's just a few days old. But are there any messages you want to wrap it up with to tell everybody that they'll hear in this interview?
Well, I mean, the whole writing thing has accelerated at a hyperbolic level. So there's another book coming out, which I think you're going to have out about the end of the month.
Yeah, so there's a book that's going to be coming out soon, which is the 4-quadrant representation of electricity. This is the book that goes along with Eric's presentation at the conference at 4quadranttheory.com. That's the presentation Eric gave at the conference with the PowerPoint and everything. And then there's a book, which has been quite a monumental task just to put it together and get all the images and stuff.
That book was probably... I have never really assembled anything to that intensity, other than maybe the RCA book, and I did it in like 1/4 of the time. And right now I'm working on the book that comes after that, which is much more technical and monstrous. I'm presently on graph paper transcribing 250 equations just from the first couple chapters of the book. This will get way off into the three-phase theory, and I don't think mathematics has ever dealt with any of this stuff before. I think it's going to be a real first time for any of this versor algebra and polyphase theory and the use of the base epsilon and imaginary logarithms. And if I were to come out with something like this in 1890, my name would be all in the history books, but unfortunately not too many people are interested in it, so I think it's mostly for my own entertainment, but I'm enjoying it. It's something that a lot of things I've been wanting to get working on for almost 3 decades.
Right.
So I'm going to write something about that on the EnergeticForum here pretty soon. So I'm going to scurry off to the bushes here in another day or two, and then write some stuff in English instead of algebraic symbols, and describe what this upcoming mathematical project is.
Now, I was down there at your lab out there in the desert, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, maybe almost a month ago or so, and had a chance to do a few other interviews with you that still haven't come out. The only one that I've posted so far is on the Wireless Giant of the Pacific, the RCA book, and so if you're listening, there are some other, video clips and pictures and stuff that I took while I was down at Eric's lab, and I'll be posting those soon. But I did want to mention that, you and John Polakowski was also there when I went down there, and you guys are doing some good work back on the bench, getting together that cosmic induction generator.
Yeah, he's doing I'm basically designing the thing and coming up with the overall plan, and then he's doing, engineering it all out and building everything. So he's pretty much about halfway into it. It's a massive project. It's costing a lot of money too. It's making his life difficult to keep buying all these expensive tubes and tube sockets. But at any rate, he's caught some kind of fever over the thing. So he has the transformers made, and he brought them out, and So I have some old Navy equipment, which unfortunately was really busted up on when it got shipped here or whatever. That hasn't helped anything. There's a lot of problems, but I got that pretty much debugged. So I'm expecting probably in a month there'll be some kind of video presentation of this thing, and it won't be shooting lightning bolts. We don't have big transmitter built yet, but at least low power to show the progress being made and some of the unique features of this particular electrical network.
Right. Yeah, those are some nice looking coils he has up on the desk. I was there, taking pictures and filming them, putting the frame together and everything, and now, so it's just a matter of upscaling that, and then upscaling it with those giant FM, or AM transmitters.
Well, yeah, I have this pair of 5 kilowatt AM transmitters, so 100% modulation. They put out 20 kilowatts, which is quite a belt of electricity. But the transformers for them will be about 3 or 4 times larger for that much power. That's still kind of, I don't even have the 3-phase power or any of that in here yet. All I got is 110. I don't even have 220. So that's kind of holding that up. But John is building the intermediary unit. He's building the 2 kilowatt version that operates in the 160 meter ham band. So that the results of that when it's fired full power will already be stunning. But the thing with the AM transmitters will duplicate what I did in Santa Barbara. If I can ever get to that point, that's still about $25,000 off. Where you have it's kind of a flame speaker type thing, but not like anybody's ever made before. There's usually, if you have a group of people that are observing it, there'll be one person that will run in fear, and there'll be 2 or 3 people that think that something's been tricked in their mind and will refuse to believe what they see, and then everybody else will be awestruck.
Right.
So Peter Lindemann did get to witness this in Santa Barbara, and there was quite a collection of people. There was a makeshift thing, with smoke coming out the tube sockets, and the RF was, driving everything in the house nuts and all that. And it could be heard 4 or 5 blocks away, and we played organ music into this thing, and it was stunning. But I don't know if I can get to that power level with the amount of income I have. But, when people think, well, Eric's got his lab, well, I really don't have much of a lab. I got a building that I stand to lose at the end of the year. It's a place to park my car and work on it out of the sun and sit down and write these books. Pretty soon it's going to be too cold here. I economically heat the place. So I've only got 1 foot out of the brush and into an enclosure. So the bulk of what I'm doing right here now is about 8 hours a day, 7 days a week is devoted to this math book I'm writing, and then we'll be doing once John gets back out here, then we're going to do a full-blown effort to get this thing all up and running so we can show the electric field around the thing and how it works and how it connects to the transmitter and how it receives telurically. And so at least, it won't be spectacular, but it will show how the stuff works. Right.
Well, as far as the lab, we're all going to work together to see what we can do to raise funds to see if we can save it, which is going to be a little bit more challenging, but there's a lot of supporters for sure, and everybody's been witnessing the sabotage by who. But yeah, no, these giant transmitters you have, I mean, they're literally the size of like photo booths. they're monsters.
Yeah, they're basically they're about the weight and the volume of my Toyota Corolla. But extended into like a big cabinet. So you could put 2 refrigerators inside, moderate-sized refrigerators inside the cabinet. Each one will require let's see, how much power do they use? I think they take about 10 kW each 3-phase to run. So it gives me the advantage that each one has a 6 kW audio amplifier for the modulator is in effect 6 kW, 6 kW, 3 kW, 3 kW. So I have a 6 kW stereo amplifier.
Right.
So if I had the means, I could really produce some stunning audio displays with discharges and mechanically resonant. But this day and age, it costs so much money to do that stuff. You can't find it. I can't run back to RCA for tubes. I can't go dig down a lease lights dumpster for light bulbs. It's gone. Days are over, so I don't know. It may not be possible to pull this back together for what might be the 9th or 10th time. Plus, I'm 61 years old, too, and I'm not too enthused about it, but there's some people that are half my age that are, so they're willing to keep going, and then when they get going, I get going.
Now, if you're listening to this, if you go to Eric's Google profile page, the big background picture for that is a picture in Eric's lab where John Polakowski is working on a transmitter, and Eric's kind of looking over his shoulder to see what's going on. And so if you see that picture, that's the cosmic induction generator that John Polakowski is working on. That's the Old Navy transmitter, and then in the background you can see some of the coils, the transformer coils that are sitting on the desk. And also while I was down there, I had a chance to meet, I won't mention his name right now, but the Glommeister, who
the guy that, he goes out and he finds a surplus and brings it here.
Right. And so I just happened to be there at the right time where he came with a whole van load of stuff, glom, lots and lots of glom, a whole van full. And I'll be putting up, some pictures and video clips so you can see an example of some of the stuff Eric's looking for. So if you have, access to a lot of these old electrical parts, these old, especially old Bell Lab equipment and this other stuff, I'll be posting some pictures and videos so you can kind of see some of that
basically
stuff.
any post-World War II Navy radio equipment and any Bell telephone. That's the two types of equipment I'm looking for.
Right. Okay. Well, let's see. We're going on half an hour here. I guess we can go ahead and wrap up, but I'm going to get this up on YouTube right away. And so again, if you're listening, please support Eric Dollard and his work down at the lab. Go to ericpdollard.com. The mailing list you can join for free, and you'll be one of the first to know any announcements going out of any new releases or new pictures and videos being posted and that kind of thing. And also, if you do want to make donations, you can send checks or money orders directly to Eric Dollard at General Delivery. That's Lone Pine, California, 93545. And that address is on the top left of ericpdollard.com, and that'll go directly to Eric. And so I guess with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll talk to you later, Eric. Thanks a lot for your time. Okay,
Bye.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
He wanted to get into the details about my concept of what I call the plank.
Okay.
So we scribbled a bunch of stuff down, and for about 3 or 4 hours, we had a good time that morning, going through all this. And the guy said, hey, that really helped me understand how all this works. So that's what started the book. At that point, one page of notes kept growing and growing. I really didn't have much of anything to do living in my car out in the desert. So I had no reference books. I had nothing at all to work with other than my head. So I figured, well, let's reinvent the theory of electricity and get all the kinks out of it. And so that started that book.
Okay, so the Lone Pine Writings literally was written on a clipboard in the front seat of your car.
Yeah.
Or a notebook.
Yeah, and there wasn't really a lot of money for paper or beer or food or much anything to do it. So it was a difficult process, but it kept going forward. And
purchasing this copy to support your work. Now, the title of it, Lone Pine Writings, do you want to give a reference or explain exactly what Lone Pine is? This is your address where you live?
Well, I wouldn't say where I live, but it's an area that I gravitate around.
And
so it's pretty much geophysically, it's a very isolated location, and it's a good place to live outside. I ended up there destitute. Somebody had sabotaged my car, and my installation at Landers had been destroyed, and pretty much that was the end of it. So I crash-landed there, and this book writing gave me something to do.
Okay. So you got into the Lone Pine area after all the Landers incident, and so what got you to writing the papers, which were originally posted on EnergeticForum, which are now called the Lone Pine Writings?
It kind of started off in a funny way. Actually, what's out now is is basically like one part of it, but there's still two-thirds of it that hasn't been published yet.
Mm-hmm. So there's so basically you would write these papers up, then you would send them off to somebody who would then type them up into EnergeticForum for you under your username T-Rex, right?
Yeah, that's what I'd have to do. Initially there was a guy there in town that said he would help me with it, but then he got all weird about it, something in my writing interfered with his religious beliefs. So there's somebody that sent me a whole bunch of people wanted me to call them, send me letters and all that. So one guy over towards the East Coast sent me a letter or whatever and said, I'll do this for you. And then I started mailing the stuff to him, and he put a lot of that together. I gotten on the Energetic Forum a lot earlier, but the person there in San Anselmo that was supposed to help me with that cut me off, and then when I got the Lone Pine, I figured, well, maybe I should start to do that again because I had no money for food or anything when I got there, and the car was wasn't a good idea to operate it because oil had been drained out of something and the bearings were bad, but I was able to move around, so I tried to go around town and see if there's some way I could work or whatever, try to get something going. So I went to the museum to see what was happening there because I'm a biologist and a number of other things, so I figured maybe there's some project I can get involved with just to pass the time. There's about 4 or 5 locals hanging out in there, and we got to talking about the power company and some other things. So one guy he's got a chemistry degree and something, so
Okay, so this is Aaron Murakami, and today is October 14th, 2013. And recently we had just released the Lone Pine writings. I guess you could call it a re-release. And I have Eric Dollards here on the phone, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Can you hear me okay, Eric?
Yeah, you're coming in fine.
Okay. Let's see. Well, as you know, we recently re-released Lone Pine writings through A&P Electronic Media. And Peter Lindemann wrote the forward in this one, and despite the fact that there was some strange things going on with this book, with it being released by others, being for sale, and being given away for free, and all this kind of stuff, despite all that, there's been a lot of show of support by a lot of people still